What is up, YouTube? My name is Hydro, aka Big Splash, and I'm here to give you my quick picks for UFC Fight Night: Marvin Vettori versus Cannonier. Let's get straight into it. First fight of the night, we got pauga versus modestas bukauskas. This matchup was a hard one to choose for me, but here I'm gonna have to go with modestas because he's so relentless. He is a great fighter. On paper, his striking isn't all the way there, but to be honest, I don't know, for some reason, and while watching this footage, he was a good striker to me in the stand-up, and he mainly likes to keep it standing up. I believe he is a kickboxer, but pauga has power, and he is a great kickboxer. So to be honest, pauga is the better striker in this matchup, but Modestas is the toughest dude in this matchup, and I think Modestas could get a win here. pauga is a upcoming prospect for the light heavyweight division, but Modestas is just something else. He is a powerhouse. He looks huge while he's in that octagon, and he's actually pretty technical with his striking. So I'm gonna have to go with Modestas in this one, but I'm not betting on this fight because pauga is a beast as well, and he hits really hard. But I'm going with my boy Modestas bukauskas. Next up, we got Dan Argueta versus Ronnie Lawrence. At first, I was iffy about this matchup, but honestly, when I was watching Dan Argueta's footage and his recent win, I'm like, Dan got this in the bag. Ronnie Lawrence is a good striker. Don't get me wrong. He's a good all-around fighter too. He wrestles a lot, or he tries to wrestle a lot. As you can see, he gets 7 takedowns in each fight, which is pretty gnarly. But in this matchup, Dan Argueta is the better wrestler. And that's what I see Dan doing here, is just pressing the wrestling on Ronnie. And Dan has decent striking to where he can actually use his striking to set up those takedowns and just control them all on the ground. Look for submissions. Probably won't get submissions because Ronnie Lawrence's jiu-jitsu is actually really good. He has a good guard when he's on his back. He knows how to defend submissions very well and just scramble. But, I mean, if it stays on the feet, they're pretty evenly matched up to me on the feet. Ronnie just keeps his hands down a little more so he could get hit. But this is a really close matchup. But I got Dan Argueta here with the better wrestling. Next up, we got Tereza Bleda versus Gabriella Fernandes. I haven't seen too much of these ladies fight, but I did watch Tereza Bleda's debut. But I was going for Natalia Silva in that fight, and Natalia Silva knocked her out with that spinning back kick. That was gnarly. But Tereza was supposed to be a upcoming prospect for the flyweight division in the women's UFC. And I still think she is. The UFC just paired her up with a dangerous female for her first UFC fight. Natalia Silva is so dangerous. I could see her becoming the champion of the flyweight division in about a few years. But yeah, Tereza Bleda here, she's no joke. She's a really good striker. She can also take you down to the ground. She has good wrestling, which means, she has good takedown defense as well. Gabriella, on the other hand, I have not seen too much footage of her, to be honest. I'm going to let y'all know right now. I have not seen footage of her. So I am going for Tereza Bleda. Even though, yeah, I haven't seen Gabriella's footage, but Tereza, she's badass. Gabriella, this is a woman's fight. I know I gotta take it more seriously because they're all UFC fights, but I just felt like I didn't have time to watch Gabriella Fernandez's footage. I'm not betting on this fight anyway. But Gabriella, she could win too. What if she's a decent striker? It doesn't seem like she likes to take it to the ground, but Tereza here, she'll wrestle you. So that's why I have Tereza Bleda in this matchup. Next up, we got zhalgas zhmagulov versus felipe bunes. This is a pretty tough debut for Felipe. They matched him up with a great striker. I know his striking differential doesn't look too good on paper, but when you see him fight these guys, he's actually really good. But he is coming off that loss from Charles Johnson. That's pretty bad. He did get outstriked by Charles Johnson. So to be honest, I'm not too worried about Felipe. I do think Felipe does got it in this matchup and will win in his UFC debut. He's really good. He has decent striking, and he's going to want to take this fight to the ground. Zhagula's takedown defense is actually pretty nice too. He's good. He has experience in the grappling department. But Felipe Bunes is just going to keep that pressure, keep that wrestling pressure, that grappling pressure. And he's not just going to shoot for takedowns. He's going to use the clinch or use his striking to set up those takedowns and get you down to the ground, control you, get you in hella submission attempts. Like, this dude, Felipe, just looks for submission over submission. And his jiu-jitsu is actually really good. So I have Felipe Bunes in this matchup. Next up, we got Carlos Hernandez versus Denny Bondar. I got Carlos Hernandez in the matchup. Denny's, he's a good all-around mixed martial artist. He's a great wrestler. He will try to take you to the ground. He'll take you to the ground 100 times. But Carlos Hernandez, I believe he'll defend some of those takedowns and just keep it on the feet, at least for the first and third round. Second round, Denny might get the takedowns and control him. But after that, Carlos is going to adjust in the third round and just outpoint him. Because even in the first round, I see Carlos Hernandez outpointing Denny in the striking. Just outboxing him, beating him up. Carlos Hernandez striking is really good. He's very technical, has good head movement. But you never see his fights go to the ground. So that's why I really think he's just mainly a striker. And even if it did go to the ground, when his fights does go to the ground, it's just him just controlling on top, getting control time, trying to ground and pound. But other than that, Carlos Hernandez is a striker, and he's a good striker at that. Denny Bondar, if he tries to strike with Carlos, that's a bad idea, because Denny's, he does not keep his hands up at all. He just swings, keeps his chin in the air, and just no high guard. So I do believe Carlos Hernandez might even clip Denny's and might knock him out, probably in the later rounds. But Denny's will for sure get takedowns on Carlos, and I hope Carlos could just stay in the fight and just stay there and survive, or at least try to get back to his feet. But other than that, I got Carlos Hernandez in the matchup being the better striker and defending some of Denny's takedowns and keeping it on the feet and outstriking him. So I got Carlos Hernandez in the matchup. Next up, we got kyung-ho versus Cristian Quinonez. This was another tough one for me, y'all. These fights just get closer and closer and just more tougher and tougher to choose. These are really good strikers right here. And this fight is going to stay on the feet. Unless kyung-ho wants to go to the ground, but I doubt it. He's actually decent on the ground. It's not that Kyung looks for submissions. He's just good at surviving on the ground. But to be honest, this fight is not going to go on the ground. This fight is going to stay standing up. Kyung-ho is a very technical striker. What I mean by technical is that he literally just uses the 1 and the 2 and then puts them together, 1, 2, literally, and throws a kick. But he has really good head movement, his shoulder movement. He creates different angles while throwing his 1s and 2s. And he could definitely outpoint his opponent by doing that. Cristian Quinonez, he's the same exact way. He has poppy shoulders, good head movement, throws his 1s and 2s. But Cristian Quinonez, on the other hand, will throw more. He'll switch it up with an uppercut. He'll throw hooks and just switch it up. To be honest, Cristian Quinonez, he's the more fun fighter in this matchup. He's going to be more loose, more fun, smiling in there, while Kyung-ho is going to be straight focused. He's still going to have that movement as well, but he's going to be technical with it and try not to get hit, but just, hit his opponent, which he usually does in all his fights. So this one was a really hard one to choose for me. But I'm going to go with Kyung-ho in this one, being the better technical striker. And I want to say he doesn't put out his opponents. He doesn't. He just outstrikes his opponents. Cristian Quinonez, on the other hand, will knock you out because he's more fun. He's more loose. But he's also kind of technical as well. I was leaning toward Cristian, but then I just kept watching footage of Kyung-ho and just the way he beat up Donna. That was amazing. Even though he just kept getting him with that jab, that was amazing. But Kyung-ho needs to switch it up a little bit while in his fights. He keeps the same patterns. So yeah, I don't know. This one I'm not betting on neither. This is a close matchup. I'm going with Kyung-ho. But I could see Cristian Quinonez getting a win in this matchup as well. Like I said, this one was hard. But for me, if I had to choose one person, I'm going to go with Kyung-ho. Next up, we got Jimmy Flick versus Alessandro Costa. They're two decent fighters going against each other. One's more of a wrestler. One is just, a straight striker. But in this matchup, I got Alessandro Costa because Alessandro Costa is going to defend Jimmy Flick's takedowns and just keep on feet and just outstrike Jimmy Flick. I can see Alessandro getting a finish here. So give me Alessandro Costa in this matchup. Next up, we got Ronnie Barcelos versus Miles Johns. Ronnie Barcelos did get knocked out pretty bad in his last matchup. I'm leaning towards Barcelos in this matchup just because the more all-around experience. But Miles Jones is dangerous and he's a good striker. Ronnnie, on the other hand, did just come off of a bad knockout. So that's why I'm iffy about this fight. I'm not betting on this fight neither. But like I said, if I had to choose one, I'm going with the more experience here. I'm going with Ronnnie Barcelos. Miles Jones is still nothing to be played with. He's a good striker. But honestly, in the striking department, I think Barcelos is better in the striking than Miles Jones. And even on the ground, I think Ronnnie Barcelos is the better all-around fighter. But he is coming off a crazy knockout. And you don't know how these fighters are going to come back from those crazy knockouts like that. Like, he was out. So you just never know. That's why I'm not betting on this fight. But if, like I said, if I had to choose from one right now in this matchup, I'll go with Ronnnie Barcelos. Next up, we got Nicolas Dalby versus Muslim Salikhov. How many times do I have to say? These are tough matchups. Look at the age. First of all, Nicolas Dalby, in his last matchup, in his last win against Sam Alvarez, he did not look like he was 38. He looked like a younger guy who was probably like 30, 32. He still has it. Muslim, on the other hand, still has it as well too. He will knock your lights out in the third round. Once you get tired, he will find your chin. But Nicolas Dalby here is so tough, and he also has a bunch of experience as well. And to be honest, Muslim is the better striker in this matchup. But once Muslim starts putting on Nicolas Dalby will just clinch you up on the cage, take you to the ground, and just wrestle you and control you. And I got Nicolas Dalby here just for the pressure, just putting more pressure on Muslim. Because Muslim, he does get knockouts, and he is good at striking, and he does outstrike his opponent sometimes. But he does it in a fashion where he stands back and he just counters you. But Nicolas Dalby here, you can't counter him if he's hugging on you. So that's why I got Nicolas Dalby in this matchup with control time and just winning the fight. But this is a tough matchup. Muslim can win this matchup as well. I'm sorry, y'all, if I lead y'all the wrong way in this one. But, I mean, this was a tough one to pick for me. At first, I was going with Muslim. I was being the better striker on the feet. But Nicolas Dalby is just tough. And he is a good striker, too. But yeah, give me Nicolas Dalby in this matchup. Next up, we got Manuel Torres versus Nicolas Motta. They were supposed to fight a couple weeks ago, but it got pushed. I don't know what happened. Maybe weight, Of course, it had to do with weight, health issues, maybe. But now they're fighting this week, and I still have Manuel Torres beating up Nicolas Motta. I don't know if he'll find a knockout, but I know for sure he's going to outpoint Nicolas, for sure. Manuel Torres striking is so elite, is so up there. Well, at least against the opponents that he's fought recently. I don't know how he'll do in the top 10, top 5, but right now he's looking so great. So that's why I have Manuel Torres in this matchup being the better striker. Because this is going to stay on the feet. They're not going to wrestle each other. These are two kickboxers straight up. So I got the better striker in this matchup, which is Manuel Torres. Next up, we got Pat Sabatini versus Lucas Almeida. Pat Sabatini has been looking pretty bad lately. He just got knocked out recently, and then I think he lost before that as well too. But he is a great fighter, and I am choosing Pat Sabatini in this matchup. In Pat Sabatini's wins, he looks so good. Like, he looked like an all elite fighter. Like, he could be in the top 5 already in the featherweight. But then in those losses, he didn't. But I still have Pat Sabatini in the matchup. Lucas Almeida is nothing to be played with. He's a great striker, a good striker. So that's why Pat Sabatini has to be careful. Pat Sabatini has to use his wrestling in this matchup, which I think he will. I think he's learned his lessons in his past couple fights to not strike with a really good striker. Actually use what you know and go to your roots, which is wrestling and grappling. But Lucas Almeida, even though he is a good striker, his striking defense is horrible. He keeps his chin wide open. While he's throwing hooks, he just keeps his hands down, even straights. His hands, his guard is not up as it should be. And his striking differential, it looks like he has, like, it should be up, but no, he keeps his face open. And Pat Sabatini, I don't know if Pat Sabatini will find his chin, which I doubt. But all I know is Pat Sabatini, to get this win, he just has to wrestle this dude, which I believe he will get the takedowns on Lucas and control Lucas. Maybe get a submission, but I do have Pat Sabatini in this matchup. Next up, we got Armen Petrosyan versus Christian Leroy Duncan. These are two good strikers going against each other. This is going to be a real fun matchup, and this matchup is going to stay strictly on his feet. And to me, I believe Christian Leroy Duncan is going to put more volume on Armin. Armin is really good. He puts the pressure and volume on his opponents as well, but not as much as Christian Leroy does. Leroy comes out there like a Tasmanian devil, but he's technical with it. Like he hits you in your face every punch he throws. He doesn't really miss a lot. And he hits hard too. So give me Christian Leroy Duncan in this matchup, keeping his O and staying undefeated. Armin Petrosyan, like I said, he is a great kickboxer too as well. But his hands aren't as fast as Christian's, and Christian's going to put more volume on Armin. And that's what I see what's going to go down in this matchup. So give me Christian Leroy Duncan in this matchup. Next up, we got Armin Tsarukyan versus Joaquim Silva. I got my boy Armin all the way in this matchup. He does got to be careful with Joaquim Silva. He is a dangerous striker. He's a very dangerous striker and hits really hard. But Armin here is the better all-around fighter. I believe here he could outstrike Silva and out-wrestle and out-grapple Silva like nothing. So give me Armin in this matchup. Maybe get a finish here. And last but not least, we got Marvin Vettori versus Jared Cannonier. This was a tough matchup for me to choose. This match is literally King Kong versus Godzilla. Whoever paired these two together and made this matchup, I love them. This is going to be an exciting fight. I mean, Jared Cannonier, he doesn't fight too exciting, but Marvin does. And I believe Marvin is going to bring that out of Jared because Marvin is going to put all the pressure on Jared. Jared is a good striker too. He's a great striker, will counter the hell out of you. You get hit by Jared, you're done. He has power of a heavyweight. He's fought in the heavyweight division. Light heavyweight, yeah, he's fought in many of the other divisions and just has all that experience. And I was kind of leaning towards Jared, but just because he did recently fight Izzy and look pretty good doing it. But also, when he did fight Strickland, you could say Strickland won that fight too. You can. That shit was close. That fight was really close. But Jared did, to me, I was going with Jared. Jared did win that fight. But here, I got Marvin Vettori all the way. Strickland is one of Vettori's training partners, so he could have gave him some advice on how to fight this big old monster. But Marvin, he's a big old monster too. And like I said, he's tough. He hits hard. He has a good wrestling game, good takedown defense. So that's why I think this fight's going to stay on the feet. And who I think the better striker is, I think Marvin Vettori is the better striker. And I think he fought Izzy Adesanya way better as well. So give me Marvin Vettori in this matchup. And that is it for my quick picks for UFC Fight Night. Marvin Vettori versus Jared Cannonier. This is going to be a great one. All the fights are going to have me at the edge of my seat. They're going to be really exciting. Hopefully we get a bunch of finishes, which I see in some of these fights. So if y'all agree with me or enjoyed this video, like and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one.